We know Netflix's Daredevil was an outstanding adaptation of the Marvel character. Both in the comics and on screen, he's a very complex individual. One of the key elements of Matt Murdock is his relationship with violence, and how close he toes the line to straight up murder. And the action in the Netflix show was relentless in showing us this. That's also why Daredevil is always surrounded by characters that do kill. The likes of the Punisher and Elektra, they all test Matt and his morals. Despite his best attempts to keep on his side of the line, comparatively to someone like Spider-Man, he is still a much darker figure. This is because even though he doesn't kill, he brutalizes. And feels an undeniable sense of freedom in doing so. In this video, I'm going to cover the relationship the show and the character has with violence, why Born Again's big violent moments aren't as memorable or impactful, ultimately for a variety of reasons, such as the Netflix show being much more grounded in realism, that it had that extra impact. The Kingpin in that show probably couldn't have squashed a guy's head bare hands. Doing it with the car door just makes it feel that more tangible. The action also symbolized the characters much better. The big signpost, gory moments of Born Again just aren't as impactful in my personal opinion, even if I do still enjoy them, and I want to talk about why I feel that way.
Maybe it isn't only about justice, Matt. Maybe it's about you having an excuse to hit someone. Maybe you just can't stop yourself.
It's no shock or new information that the Netflix run featured some of the best comic book action scenes ever put to screen, and partially due to the gore that they allowed.
You know, he supposedly crushed a guy's head.
On the surface level, this worked at targeting an older and different audience to what the films normally do, and just grounds the world much more. One of the big gripes when I was younger I always had with the films was how a character could take a royal beating but come out with just a few bruises and cuts. But Daredevil shows how taking a punch actually fucking hurts. It showcased the toll on the body as well as the psyche. Matt is a devout Catholic, and so to not only have the capability, but at times feel the need to take such violent action, even if it is based in good reason, which it obviously is, you know, battling the Hand and Kingpin, we know that he is doing good, and that's what he hopes. He hopes that he is doing God's work. But equally, that's the fear, the fact that he's not sure, the fact that he has these urges and, as I say, capability to do such violent things. What if he is the devil incarnate because of that brutal nature?
Sometimes I think you really just might be the devil.
Sometimes I think I might be too.
The Netflix show adapted this so perfectly, and the Disney continuation attempted to explore that inner conflict just as much. After giving up the mask due to attempting to cross that line, after Foggy's death, which I'm still not over, the urge is still very much there, even a year since he last put on the costume. He tries to stay away from taking action, but through the flaws of the system that he's attempting to obey, the darkness in him expands. Despite these being factors of both versions of the show, the Disney iteration does it in a much less effective way, in my personal opinion. I think overall, the visual tone of the show just does play a factor into this. We used to have a very gritty look that helped ground everything. Even in season 3, that takes a bit more of a gothic approach to the cinematography, still used colour and lighting effectively to portray the violence and inner turmoil in Matt. And as I was hinting at before, that grounded nature allows the punches and the broken bones to just hit that much harder because it feels more tangible. It's always going to hit much harder like that than a muddy coloured CGI fight. That first episode of Born Again is a prime example. The moment Matt is pushed to the edge and tries to take a life. The general look of the sequence fails to capture the harshness that I think it really wants to. I think when they're on the roof they do a pretty good job at showing him overcome with rage, and I do like the sequence as he stalks Bullseye through Josie's. But seeing CG doubles as they climb the building just can't give that same tangibility. So the dilemma comes from the act of taking Dex's life. And again, I will come back around to this, but the violence itself isn't as much of a subject as the idea of killing is in this season. I think one of the best examples of showing Daredevil's dangerous relationship with his own violence is in Nelson v. Murdock.
How many fingers am I holding up?
One.
We get a flashback to the first time he acted on these fighting thoughts. He doesn't stop after knocking the guy down and warning him. He continues to pound on him beyond what was necessary for his goal, basically hitting flow state. It's a big part of the show and the character, and Born Again makes it essential to his arc.
It's hard to come to terms with a violent nature.
The first moment he relapses into violence is in episode 2, where these cops get the jump on him, and as expected, he really fucks them up. But the action is very quick cut in a disorientating way, and it feels as if it's built upon those moments of gore. The next time he's involved in an action scene is in episode 5, the bank heist. The final scene in the street sees him smashing the guy's face into glass shards and breaking his leg. Both sequences are flawed in the sense they're both edited pretty poorly, but clearly within the context of the narrative and character arc, it's supposed to show Matt returning to that tightrope of his brutal nature deep down, and it does get that across, in large part due to Charlie Cox's performance. But there is a key aspect of this whole show that makes these moments of brutality less impactful. The gory moments in Born Again feel like they were added in after to fill the darker tone agenda. There are other moments, such as in one episode we see two guys get their heads blown off while sat in a truck, and of course the big one is Kingpin's head crush in the finale. All of these moments feel flashier than anything in the Netflix show, and so all in all it comes off like they're only there to hit certain checkpoints for Marvel, which of course therefore lessens the impact of it on the character arc.
The mistake was thinking I was immune to the darkness.
It lessens the impact of those more violent moments. And when it comes to the conversation about violence in Born Again, it's just not very nuanced. It's incredibly surface level, and it doesn't leave much conflict for Matt or for us. Granted, I do think it tries. I mean, I think Matt carrying around the horn is a pretty good representation of him never being able to let go of Daredevil, let go of the violence, and I think that's made even better by the fact that Karen gives it to him. The conversation with Kingpin in episode 1 and the conversation with Frank. But then we get to like this conversation in episode 6 of Born Again with Heather, and she's literally just saying outright the themes and moral dilemmas. So it makes for a mixed presentation of that specific theme. I also think the interrogation with Bullseye is another great moment. You see Matt overcome with rage. It feels boiled down to, don't worry guys, Matt doesn't kill, so we're allowed to enjoy his violence. There's a whole other layer to the character that was done so well before, so you can't help but take notice of how it's done here. All we get is Cherry being an annoying prick. Maybe if they didn't fucking kill off Foggy in episode 1. Back in season 3, Matt and Karen have a conversation where she explains that maybe Daredevil isn't the problem when it comes to his addiction of going out at night and waging war on the criminals through violent nature. Basically calling out that it's Matt Murdock who can't resist the temptation of Daredevil because it's a part of him, which is absolutely true, but he doesn't have to avoid it. Everyone has a bit of dark as well as light, and it's about balance. But to me, that dance with violence in Born Again feels almost fake, almost performative in a way. The most brutal moments of the Netflix show had purpose to show darkness. We see Fisk smash a head in a car door, even though we actually don't see that much of it. It is still infinitely more impactful than Kingpin's head crush in the finale. I think because of how it relates to the character, it is a childish outburst of rage. It has something to say about him. There are plenty of moments where Matt pushes further than he probably needs to in fights. There's a moment I remember where Matt is interrogating a junkie for information, and he is just brutal in slamming him against a wall despite him clearly being fucked up on God knows what. Such moments are made all the more impactful from yet another flashback, where Elektra hands him the guy who killed his father. He violently beats him into disfigurement before stopping at the brink of death. These moments make his acts in the present more meaningful. We know how close he can get and how close he has been. So when we see his actions now and we hear the bones break and the force of the punches, we feel it on a character level as well. One of the other notable brutal moments comes in the fight with Nobu in season 1, which is actually what leads to Foggy finding out Daredevil's identity. Matt showed up to that fight with the intention of killing Fisk. Despite his retrospective regret, I think it's no coincidence that it's when that's his motivation, he gets his ass handed to him. We often see Matt take a beating, but Nobu is one of those particularly memorable cases because he is just leaking blood all over this warehouse. And I think that somewhat signifies the balance that he intentionally threw out the window when he got there. Similarly in season 3 with Dex being introduced and is essentially perfectly trained to combat Matt. As we know this season, he gives up the Murdock mantle and finds himself on the brink of death more than once. I think, again, somewhat representative of Matt's decisions.
A friend of mine says that if I don't change the way I do things, I will end up bloody and alone.
It makes a point not to glorify his actions and thoughts. It's not solely about crossing that line that is challenging his faith and his morals. That flashback in season 1 is a truly perfect example. It's highly satisfying to see a pedophile get beaten like that, but there's a hint of darkness as we see Matt get a taste for it and even acknowledge that. And as we know, he didn't look back after that night.
Maybe you just can't stop yourself.
I don't want to stop.
I think in Born Again, they were so concerned at fans being disappointed at it being toned down in the gore department that they felt like they had to go even bloodier and added those moments in isolation. But also due to the lighting and color grading of the entire show, the violence doesn't feel as grounded overall, so it doesn't feel as real, and the reasons for it being there don't really feel like there are any. And it doesn't really feel like it justifies its violence as much. In general, it feels more artificial. I relatively like Born Again, don't get me wrong, despite its many flaws. And I like that the show wasn't afraid to be brutal. I am a bit of a freak in that department. I do love when shows or films go the extra mile to be brutal. But of course, it's always a case-by-case basis on how it's included. And I just think with Born Again, on a narrative and character level, the action doesn't really have the same effect on the audience, and I think this is why.